I am just after the meeting and I'm pleased to break the news that my motion with the support of the SNP group and being seconded by Junaid Ashraf has now passed into policy. This is a big step forward and to the best of my knowledge it's the largest step in Scotland at any Scottish council with regards to anti-racist education. This expansion and strengthening of our curriculum to include the reality of the former British Empire, colonialism and the many generations lost to the transatlantic slave trade is well overdue. There's a great deal to come and I hope to be able to share that with you as I plough through the work over the coming months. That this is made possible. This is a huge victory for Scotland as we all benefit when the truth is being taught and of course in particular those that descend from Afro-Caribbean ancestry and those that are children of the descendants of former colonies of Britain. The next steps include advancing this right across Scotland and beyond. For too long, stories of Afro-Caribbean contributions and the contributions of those from the former colonies have been written out of history, and this will ensure that their voices are now heard. So watch your space, because the foundations for all this work is now set, and thank you for your support. Ashraf, Councillor at North Lanarkshire, and on the 13th of August I'll be proposing the anti-racist education motion to Council. This motion to Council is a landmark motion, formed with the support of academics, educationalists, the Convener of Education and Skills, Claire Adamson NSB, and the support of my SNP colleagues at North Lanarkshire Council, in particular Councillor Agnes McGowan and the seconder of this motion, Councillor Junaid Ashraf. What this motion aims to do is to include the real and unadulterated truth of Britain's past in our education curriculum. We're asking for the inclusion of the undiluted history of our country with all its blemishes, including our involvement in the past wars, colonialism, and the significant part we played in the transatlantic slave economy for over 250 years. We're asking for nothing less than the truth of the matters to be taught. This will give every child the context of so much of the strife in the world, its background and its long-reaching implications which stretch to this day, much of which exists in the form of institutional racism and structural inequalities. We're calling on the Chief Executive and the Head of Education to work closely with the Scottish Government, Education Scotland, COSLA and teaching unions to produce and implement anti-racist educational materials, resources, and to apply this in the curriculum. Further, we're asking for the inclusion of Britain's use of its people from across the British colonies in the Great Wars to recognise the long-standing effects of colonialism around the world and to teach the whole truth on the regrettable and significant part Britain played in the transatlantic slave trade economy. And because we know we need to equip those who will eventually teach this, the frontline educators, we're further asking the Head of Education to provide training and guidance for teachers to discuss sensitive topics around racism and the role of Britain and its imperialist influence. This motion, if passed, will equip our educators with the confidence and support needed to teach this necessary education in today's world.
Well, so a few months ago, 7 to be precise, actually, I covered this article here because two brothers, Danish and Junaid, or whatever his name is, Ashraf, had put forth motions to North Lanarkshire Council to implement anti-racist education. Now, of course, the videos that I just played there, it was, of course, passed in due course. And one of these two brothers, Danish, Ashraf, or however you actually pronounce it, I don't know, is now standing to be, he's on the regional list for the SNP. You know, really scraping the fucking barrel if you ask me. This is Scottish nationalism, folks. But just a quick recap for anybody that isn't familiar with the ins and outs of the video that I made all those months ago. Well, essentially it was talking about the work that was inspired by the BLM movement, and it will include a critical re-examination of the area's street names, statues, schools and other buildings to establish which of those, if any, pay homage to those engaged in racist exploitation, as well as a rethink of all policy areas to root out anything that keeps ethnic minority residents at a disadvantage. The move by councillors Paul Kelly of Labour, SNP brothers Danish and Jinied Ashraf was reviewed in the Sunday National. The three said the joint work was essential to ensure the move was more than party politics. And I didn't intentionally forget to leave out Paul Kelly. I just forgot he was involved in this nonetheless. Now, it goes on to say here that North Councillor Danish, Ashrad said, "To our knowledge, this is the single largest step in Scotland towards decolonising education in any council. The expansion and strengthening of our curriculum to include the reality of the former British Empire, colonialism and many generations lost to transatlantic slave trade is well overdue. This is a huge victory for Rainbow Unicorn Land as we all benefit from the truth being taught, and of course in particular for descendants of former colonies and of Afro-Caribbean ancestry." Brother Jinnad, whatever, who represents Cumbernauld South, added, "With the passing of this composite motion to endorse the BLM movement, North Lanarkshire Council has the ability to be at the forefront of the most progressive change for race equality within Scotland. This is truly the proudest moment of my political career to date. It took real courage to bring forward the proposals, to take a long hard look at ourselves and really question if we are being inclusive of everyone. We will review all statues, historical symbols, buildings and schools in North Lanarkshire to properly understand their history and context. Also seeking to decolonise the curriculum, set up a community-wide ethnic minority cross-party group with real power to make recommendations to the council and reflect on the challenges to race equality within North Lanarkshire. North Lanarkshire is leading Scotland in race equality, and I cannot wait for all of us to make a success of these new proposals." Furthermore, adding that the anti-racist motion passed today is very personal to him because he's fucking brown. Now in North Lanarkshire, when young boys and girls who have the same background as I do, as an ethnic minority Scot, you are not, oh my, you see, even last time I remember getting really angry at this, you're not an ethnic minority Scot, you're an ethnic minority living in Scotland. Scottish people are an ethnic group. This shit's got to stop. I'm coming to the point of this video. Believe me, I'm not just making a video for the sake of rehashing old ground, but like seriously, that really pisses me off. You're not a fucking ethnic minority Scot. Nonetheless, to go to school, they can feel as if their history and reality is being taught them. Well, if we're all the same, this is the bullshit I keep talking about. We're all taught we're all the same, then it should really be irrelevant if the curriculum's too white, you know, because we're all Scottish at the end of the day, but it's not really about that, is it? Because it's a lack of representation, because you don't see yourself because you're brown and I'm not. Anyhow, the reason I bring this up is for the following.
I'm proud to say that the SNP's 2021 election manifesto has included the work I led on the groundbreaking anti-racist education policy at North Lanarkshire Council. The manifesto promises to deliver anti-racist education across local authorities and includes proposals from the BAME Network manifesto. This is an incredible win for the people of Scotland, our colleagues at North Lanarkshire Council, BAME Network and our MSP colleagues who I work closely with to make this a reality. It is particularly poignant for those of us from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities in finding and accepting our collective truth, history and what we have gone through. We've made history.
Yeah, that's right, folks. It's not just North Lanarkshire anymore. Huh? No. Absolutely and utterly over the moon. This is Danish Ralph here. Over the moon. The SNP manifesto has taken my motion from council with Jiniad Ashraf and proposals from the SNP BAME network to roll out across the entirety of Scotland if re-elected. People power, both votes SNP, anti-racist education. Yeah. So of course, I've read through the majority of this manifesto. I'd be lying if I told you that I've read every single page in its entirety because quite frankly, there's only so much I can take of utter waffle for the most part. If it's not bullshit about climate change and the poor women's, of course, it's about diversity and inclusion, etc. If it's not about independence, it's about diversity and inclusion. You know, this magical independence that they always promise, but nonetheless. So the first thing that stuck out to me, of course, in relation to what this video's about, this isn't where this thing's mentioned in regards to this motion that Danish Ashraf and his wee brother and that Paul Kelly guy implemented in North Lanarkshire. No, but this was the first mention of it. But it's just beautiful. It's just a passionate country that we are. Our vision, this is the SNP's fucking manifesto, by the way, you know? I wish I was joking, but I'm not. Our vision is to make Scotland a global leader in diversity and inclusion, to increase fairness and tackle inequality, remove societal disadvantage and also attract and retain talent to create more business opportunities and to remove social disadvantages. Introducing an overreaching Scottish diversity and inclusion strategy covering the public sector, I need to scroll out a bit if it's possible. Oh, Jesus. I'm back in. Educational institutions, justice system, transport and workplaces. This strategy will focus on the removal of institutional, cultural and financial barriers which lead to inequalities in relation to gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, disability and social mobility. Increasing and improving our data collection so that across all our policies we will have a strong evidence base and be able to gauge intersectional inequality, measure outcomes and recommend improvements. The negative impacts of COVID were disproportionately felt by different groups in society. For our minority ethnic communities, they were both health and financially impacted. Or they were both health. Oh fuck, I think it might be a typo, I don't know. No, it wasn't. But anyway, this is why we established the Social Renewal Advisory Board and also the Expert Reference Group on COVID-19 and ethnicity. Building on the recommendations, we will develop our next Race Equality Action Plan with stakeholders and ethnic minority communities to reach the objectives set out in our Race Equality Framework 2016 to 2030. Mentions briefly Gypsy Travellers. Then goes back on to the minorities, of course, where it says here that we will increase the number of minority ethnic people able to benefit from the new Minority Ethnic Leadership and Development Programme that has been established in partnership with the John Smith Centre. Of course! That was something that it was news to me. I had a wee gander on that. I posted it on my Telegram channel, actually. There was some funding. I think it was a couple of $100,000 of taxpayers' money was put aside to specifically and prioritise BAMEs. Of course, to break down the barriers. Let's just prioritise fucking BAMEs. Of course. Anyway, we will increase support to projects which are supporting disabled people and those from minority ethnic backgrounds into positions on public boards to increase representation. And it's this bollocks about representation all the fucking time, you know, because they don't see themselves. And I love how they lump in disabled people with BAMEs. You know, I'm sure an able-bodied person could quite easily represent a disabled person and vice versa, but I'm just saying, why do we need black people in there just because they're black? Anyhow, I do love this bit here where it says, we will support teachers with materials to teach our young people about the dangers of disinformation and fake news. Okay, everything the SNP says is shit. The irony, of course, is they've got a whole fucking section dedicated to climate change, man-made climate change, and that is fake news. Nonetheless, inclusive education. Well, here it is. You know, it's not very elaborate, but the point is, so it's been included. It's been incorporated. So it starts off here. Sorry, I can't zoom in properly because the recording thing is covering the zoom in bit. So we recognise the importance of having equality and human rights embedded in our education. We remain fully committed to progressing delivery of the world-leading recommendations on LGB emphasis on the T inclusive education across the curriculum in order to improve the learning environment for all children and young people. We believe in an educational approach to tackling homophobic, biphobic and transphobic bullying, and prejudice in schools is essential. LGB emphasis on the T History Month. Role models and equalities education should be taught in schools to tackle the prejudice, which often leads to the bullying and social exclusion of young LGB emphasis on the T young people. To achieve this, we have funded Time for Inclusive Education, or TIE, to work with decision. Need to do it again. Makers produce curriculum resources and deliver services for teachers and pupils to raise awareness, heighten knowledge and foster good relations. We are committed to that work and we will continue to fund it until the prejudice that has blighted too many young lives is eradicated. The BLM movement, the anti-white movement, has shown a powerful spotlight on continuing racial injustice and race-based violence and the need for countries to face their colonial history. Oh, you mean that Fentanyl Floyd died, riots across the West, mainly in America, but protesting the like here, statues being pulled down, etc., over a bullshit narrative, and all of a sudden we now need to face our history. I don't see how the two equate, but we'll just give them the benefit of the doubt. They clearly know what they're talking about. We will fund the development of an online programme on Scotland and the UK's colonial history throughout the world that can be delivered to schools, and we will encourage local authorities to adopt the programme in all schools. Taking the widely acclaimed Thai campaign as a model, we will create a new programme of anti-racist education in schools, including support for teachers' professional development, allowing every school to access high-quality anti-racist education. To track progress, we will improve the reporting and publication of data on racist incidents in school. Wow. So, there you have it, folks. It's in the small print because I said there's not much elaboration on the subject at hand, but they're going to be Where was it? Creating a program of anti-racist education in schools. Now, what could that possibly mean? Well, who really fucking knows? But I have a bright idea. I think I know what it is, because I've covered it enough now. I know what these anti-racist academics, these anti-white wankers are all about. I know what their ideology professes, and I know what cancer the SNP is involved with. It is a fucking joke. You know, it gets worse though in this. I mean, I might as well, while I'm on this subject, there's no more on this. It's, you know, net zero bullshit, of course. You know, and then it's this bit here, migration. You know, they just don't shut the fuck up. You know. So, over the course of the next Parliament, they want to maintain and strengthen Scotland's relationship with our EU partners with a view to joining as soon as possible, increase international development fund from 10 to 15 million, bring forward a Wellbeing and Sustainable Scotland Bill to make it a statutory requirement for all local public bodies and local authorities in Scotland to consider the long-term consequences of their policy decisions on the well-being of people, establish a migration service for Scotland to help people settle easily into communities across Scotland, yada yada. You know, where it goes on here that we rely on migration to grow our population because we're a welcoming and inclusive nation and we value everyone, no matter their birthplace, who have chosen to make Scotland their home, apparently. You know, we will continue to fund support for EU citizens who seek to apply for the EU settlement scheme. We will work to build Scotland's population sustainably. What do you mean sustainably? You know, this word, sustainable developments, Agenda 2030, etc. Like, these are things people need to realise that when they say the word sustainable answers, they're talking about population. Like, you know, we need sustainable farming. Well, in order for farming to be what they would consider sustainable, there needs to be less people for the farmers to produce for, etc. So how are you going to build our population sustainably? I will tell you how they're going to do that, or how they intend to do that, and what that really means. That means that they ain't going to encourage or incentivise native births. No, as we die out, as we don't have enough babies, they will just take people from overpopulated parts of the world and plant them here. That's what they fucking mean. Don't need to be conspiracy theorists for that one, because they say it themselves. They fucking say it right there, that they rely on migration to grow the population. Let me see. With independence and full power over migration policy, we can build asylum and immigration systems geared to meet Scotland's needs and founded on fairness and human rights. They call on the government to, you know, it's the usual bollocks. I remember covering this the last time, you know, and nothing's really changed. But to devolve migration policy to Scotland so we can build a fair system that meets Scotland's needs. And what do you mean by Scotland's needs? Well, we rely on immigration because our birth rate's low, you know, that's what they're saying. We needed to grow our population. So what do you think that means? So simultaneously, hand in hand, they're now implementing an anti-racist education. They're also wanting open borders, technically. But there's one more thing that I want to show. Let me see if I can find it. Right there. Good global citizen, you know. No borders, we're global citizens. But this bit here, for anyone that knows me, followed my channel for some time, you'll know exactly what this is. Agenda 2030. As we recover and rebuild from the pandemic, it's more important than ever to be guided by the vision and values of Scotland's National Performance Framework and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Scotland's National Performance Framework, by the way, every single policy that the SNP implement is working in tandem with that National Performance Framework. I'm not even joking. They are nothing more than a mouthpiece for the fucking UN, this party. But anyway, we will bring forward a Wellbeing and Sustainable Scotland Bill during the next Parliament, legislation which would make it a statutory requirement for all public bodies and local authorities in Scotland to consider the long-term consequences. I've already read this bit in the last bit. You know, and then it says up here, alongside this, we will establish a ministerial working group on policy coherence for sustainable development in the public sector, sustainable development goals, action which will reaffirm commitment to achieving SDGs across the public sector. And they're even going on about peacekeeping. I mean, just shut the fuck up, honest to God. We will continue to support UN Secretary Council Resolution 1325, training women to play crucial roles in peace building and conflict resolution. Okay. I know I've kind of gone off topic a bit, but the point is, though, that they're planning to implement a program nationwide that promotes anti-racist education, and it just seems to be getting slipped in unless people have paid any attention and they've read it. You know, I will leave on that note, and I hope to start getting back into swing of things for soon, but as I said, my head's just tatty scond, as they say up here, eh? But hope you have a good weekend. Peace.